Hi, this is Calvin Cox, and my talk this evening is going to be if the big kaboom occurs. And it has to do with the security, level of security and preparations for the continuation of the country if in fact a large attack were to occur in downtown Washington, D.C. The problem with Washington, D.C. is you have the Capitol, where all Congress is, 530-something members, all their staffers. Then just a little ways away, you can stand on the halls of Congress and look over and see in the direction of the White House. It's very close. And then if you're at the White House and went on a roof, you could look over and see the Pentagon. You essentially have all the leadership of the whole country in one very small area. And if something horrible happened, I pray this never happens, but if it did, what would occur? The big kaboom, nowadays they have nuclear weapons that fit in a backpack, and I guess they're about 80 pounds or 100 pounds, and they're as strong as a bomb that hit Hiroshima, which was a 12-kiloton bomb. And so my point being, a lot of times we have these big holidays and everybody gets together and they have parades and everything, and many of the members of Congress, I guess, are in town. The president, the vice president's there, people from the Pentagon. And it's really something that leaves the country, in my feeling, very vulnerable. Should something like an attack ever occur, you could basically destroy 95% of all the leadership in the country. The only people who would be left who really had a lot of power would be the governors of all the states. Well, there's a problem. In Congress, when freshman congressmen come in, I've heard or I've read that, they get in there and they have to learn the process. They have to learn all the ropes of how do you initiate a bill, how do you shepherd it through Congress and to completion and have it go into law. Well, if a large attack occurred and they were successful at destroying a lot of the members, leadership of the country, my question is, who would be left to, keep the government running? Back in Bush, back in the early 2000s, I believe he initiated the shadow government. Well, the problem with that idea, in a way, it's a good idea, but the bad part of it is, if a nuclear device was detonated, it destroyed, Congress, the president, people in the Pentagon. How in the world would you actually know who the people are of the shadow government? Do you think if these individuals came up and said, "Oh, I'm the shadow government, I'm in charge now," do you think anybody's really going to believe them? I mean, if all the other leaders were wiped out, for one, I think there would be mass panic, and I don't think anybody other than a governor of a state would be even believed by people who had just been attacked. Everything would be in total disarray. That's the bad thing about the shadow government that I don't like. You don't know who the people are. And so, what good does that do you? If everybody else is wiped out, then these people appear. Who in the world would believe that they're actually, how do you know it's not somebody just trying to seize the opportunity and take over the country? You don't know. I think a better idea would be if here is Washington, D.C., that 1/3 of Congress, and these would be congressmen that know how to initiate bills and get them passed and how to handle a lot of difficult situations that arise in the country. Members of Congress, I'm not talking about the governors of states, but 1/3 of all Congress should be traveling from Washington to some 3 or 4 states away to an undisclosed location. These are people that you always see on the news. People are familiar with who they are. And that's the whole idea, is that people would know if a major attack occurred. People would know, hey, I recognize that person. I can trust that person. I've read about them. You know, you see them in the news. You know who they are. They constantly work in Congress. You're going to be reassured. Me personally, I would be much more comfortable knowing some members, familiar ones that you have seen, if there were an attack, had survived, and that somebody that the American public recognized was there to be in control. Okay? So my thing is, if Washington, D.C. was right here, that you would always have 1/3 of Congress and a lot of these congressional members that are very familiar, that are on TV regularly on the news, would travel to undisclosed location, and then from there they would go to another location, and from there they would come back. So you'd always have some leaving, some traveling here, and some traveling there. And with that situation in place, I think it would be essentially impossible for any terrorist organization or individuals to mastermind a plan to attack Washington and leave us in total disarray. I do not believe that that could occur if this was implemented. This is something I believe is super important. You know, we don't live in a day and age back in 1940 at the beginning of World War II. We don't live in that situation anymore. What we live in is a world that a nuclear weapon can be launched halfway around the world. You know, it can be here, I think it's like 22 minutes later, something, or 30 minutes later. It can come over to North Pole. If it came from Russia, if it came from China, or whomever. You don't know. We live in a very different world. We're very susceptible to attack, and attack with weapons that are so unbelievably powerful. You know, they could wipe out the whole U.S. Congress, the President, the Pentagon, all like that. So I think it makes sense. Members of Congress should also travel with, probably a good idea would be travel with members also of the Pentagon. And they should travel with these congressional members also. And some of the, you know, congressional whomever assistants. It would just be a much safer plan. It's something that puts the country in a much more stable position all the time. We don't have to worry about, you know, a major attack totally destroying the leadership of the country. And one of the other things then, what I read about the shadow government was that partially the shadow government was a huge assemblage of all the information having to do with who the contractors are that the federal government typically works with to handle all the business of the government. So with the members of Congress, the members of the Pentagon always traveling, so they're not always in one place in Washington, and with the information that's in the shadow government, wherever that is, the two together, then should a really bad situation occur, the country could continue to function with these people of Congress, the Pentagon, the shadow government, and the governors of all the states of the United States of America. Thank you.